helping Bailey put the train tickets into his inner pocket before he left the car. Even though there were kindly other passengers, some offering food, the Johnson children knew they were now alone. The constant motion, especially during the dark hours, made Marguerite feel sicker and sicker. There was little comforting her. She had early on understood that she was too black, too tall, too gap-toothed to ever be a pretty girl. When she had watched her father walk away from the car in which they rode, she could see him from the dirty window, and she could tell from the set of his shoulders that he would not give in. They were going away. She did not care where or why or who would be taking care of them. All she knew was that they were no longer going to live with their mother and their father. For Bailey, now 2 years older, the pain was worse. He was 5. He knew that once a person set foot on a train, there was no walking back to the starting point. He had been to the railroad yard often. Some of his dad's friends worked there. He understood steam engines and the way the trains worked. He knew how the coal dust dirtied the air, but it was the sheer power of the fuel propelling the train that most excited him. He had also gone to pick up the Baxter relatives when they came for visits. Everybody who could afford a ticket traveled by train. Railroads were like the military. They created choices for families who didn't have the money to buy cars or to think about getting more schooling. American culture, especially among the lower and middle classes, ran on trains and military service. What saved Bailey from the tears that swamped his little sister was the order his military father had given him. "You are in charge of your sister. Take care of her. Pay attention. Do not eat all your lunch at once." There were more orders, coming from the sometimes stern lips of the man who often frightened them, but Bailey had long ago gotten the idea. Men were to be in charge. They took care of girls, just as his father sometimes took care of his mother. Gender behavior during the 1920s was divided in 2 parts. Men did this, women did that. Men went to train stations, they rode buses, they talked about what cars they would buy. Such behavior aligned men with technology, with the amazing force of physical power, physical action, visible bravery. Women, in another sphere of behavior, were clean. They took care of their clothes and their hair ornaments. They savored their personal beauty. Just as so many African-American men joined the military, partly for the pay and the education such service provided, but mostly for the macho appearance the tailored dress uniforms created, so men's behavior tended to be judged from the outside. Yet even as Bailey could assume the charge of taking care of his little sister, Marguerite herself could not stay tidy, much less clean, on that long train trip. The pink edge on her new anklets was already smudged with coal dirt. She continued crying. Especially after the porter left them, her sobs grew louder. It was as if she were trying to drown out the muffled clacking sounds that rose through the tawdry covering under their feet. Bailey handed her a sandwich, and she chewed into the bread. Dry as the food was, she knew that when nightfall came, she and Bailey would be alone, and she could not stop the rising fear. She belatedly asked her brother, "Who was moving it, Bailey?" He knew these kinds of answers. That was what 5-year-olds were capable of understanding. "There is always an engine, Ritzy," came the answer. "I met one of the engineers who drive it." Chewing solemnly, Marguerite began to calm down, even as the car darkened. Bailey's knowledge impressed her. She had relied on him for all the care her parents sometimes forgot to give their children. As she scrutinized her "to whom it may concern" tag, still chewing, she knew that they would reach their destination the next morning, and that she was, until then, in her brother's care. She was ready to sleep. Sending their children back to Bailey's mother and brother, Annie Henderson and Willie Johnson, was a last resort for Vivian and Bailey Sr. Annie owned a store, after all, so she would be able to at least feed Ritzy and Bailey Jr. She would also be able to keep track of them, out there in the country of modestly cared-for houses, sheds, and farms. The black side of Stamps hardly ever saw strangers. Blacks lived with blacks, and there were no predatory passers-through as there were in St. Louis or Long Beach. The enclave in which Bailey Sr. had grown up, there in the corner of Lafayette County, the place he had been so eager to leave.